welcome back. Back to the native TODO app. I'm going to try to get this wrapped up, this little example how to make a native application, well, web native using native web technologies, no framework, using just plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And the last thing we're going to do is add animation, just a little bit of subtle animation to make this look a little bit better. We're not going to do too much more with the styles. This is kind of plain looking, but CSS we will talk more about as I go on. But I think that it's probably the least endangered part of the web as far as people doing development without using frameworks. Tailwind is a thing now, but like I said, we'll make that point a little bit later. I did move the CSS back to being just page level CSS. Now, last video I talked about how to do it inline. If you like that kind of style, if you like that tailwind kind of look, I don't, number one. And number two is there are some things that won't quite work the same if you do it that way because of the way CSS deals with precedence rules. So if you put it right in the style tag, it has very high precedence, and there will be nothing that you can do outside of the style tag to override it. And that includes stuff in certain things with pseudo classes and things. So you might want to avoid it for that reason as well. But depending on what you're doing, you may not, but just something to watch out for if you do take that approach. I do think it has the advantage of being local if you do it inline, but I like my HTML staying clean, and I'd rather just deal with kind of duplicating the hierarchy and dealing with the consequences of that. I do nested CSS and hierarchies. That's widely supported in browsers now. There's no reason not to use it. It makes your rules a lot easier to look at. Now, as you'll see here, I don't always go all the way with the nesting. I kind of break stuff up and do nesting where I feel like it. So this add form and to-do list could be inside of main, but I don't need them to be. They're ID ones, so they're already kind of identified with one role, with one selector anyway. And also main kind of is too high of a level of page element for me to necessarily do all that nesting. So with that said, everything else is just where we left it. And I want to talk about animating these things. There are a couple kinds of animation we can do. The first animation I want to talk about the first thing I want to animate is this crossing off. Right now, when we cross it off, it just turns gray and has a strike through on it. And this one, because if you remember, what's making that strike through happen is actually just the pseudo class here on the span. So if we're in a label that has a checked checkbox, the span gets these styles. So it's only being applied by that, not by JavaScript. And since that is a style that is being affected by different CSS rules being applied, we can just use simple transitions. So all we have to do for that is we are going to want to put it on the root of span. So I'm going to make one here for all spans, not just spans that are that way. And we're just going to do a simple transition here, and the simplest one we can do. So we're just going to do transition all 0.25 seconds. And now all the properties that'll change will change over the course of a quarter second. So there's a little bit of subtle animation there. If you can't see it, I can jump that up a bit to 5 seconds, and then it will be very clear that that's happening. You'll notice the strike through isn't animating because, of course, strike throughs aren't animatable, but the color is. So let's get that back down to 0.25. And that's all we have to do for that animation. So hopefully you already know about that with CSS. But if not, there you go. So that takes care of that one. The next thing I want to animate is when I add items. So if I add an item here, add add item, it just shows up right away. And I don't want it to show up right away. I want it to kind of start off small and grow. And I think I want to, at the same time, change the opacity. Well, this one's a little bit trickier. We can't use a transition because we are going from it not existing to it existing. So transition is not going to be applied. Don't believe. So let's see here. Okay. So what we're going to do for this one is we're going to use keyframes. So this is another way that we can do animation. So with keyframes, we're just going to come down here and make a new keyframe rule. And I'm going to call this one fade in. And this will start this thing's height and padding at 0, so that it'll be nice and smashed, and end it at the 50 pixels that we have there. So I'm just going to do it in this keyframes. I'm going to say at 0%, have a height of 0, a padding of 0. I guess I'm only wanting to affect the top and bottom padding, so I can use padding block to just set those. And then at 100%, we want the height to be 50, and we want the padding block level to be, let's break those up here too, just so it's not confusing. I think right now the padding on, we're going to apply this to the list items. So right now I have the padding specified as one big padding property. We can break those up, so I can say padding block. So that's the top and bottom, that's that first number. And then padding inline. It's the same thing, it just, this way it reflects kind of what we're animating. We don't have to break that up, but I'll make it easier. So 10 pixels is the destination. That's where we want to end up. So we'll say 10 pixels at 100%, and that should do it. So we've defined this animation, but right now you'll notice nothing happens because that animation is just a animation. We have to put it on the thing we want to animate. So the LI is what we want to animate. If we just put an animation on it, so fade in, that's the name of the animation, and over a quarter second, ease in and out. Instead of linear, this will, like, you know, make the edges take a little bit longer. And that should do it. So now it is not doing it. Something is missing here. There we go. I forgot to save, that's all. All right, so now if we add an item, it kind of starts small and gets bigger. And I wanted to change the opacity here too. So we'll also start on that same fade in animation, we'll start the opacity at 0 and the opacity here at 1. And that should be good. So now we get that animation. It's fading in and doing that. Okay. So last thing we need to do is take care of this when we're removing the items. They're just snapping right off. We have this nice thing when we add one. And that add one applies when the page loads too, because it's the same thing. When the thing is first rendering, it starts the animation. If we put it on a pseudo class or something, the animation would start as soon as the class was applied. But I like that it's doing it on load, so I'm not going to change that. That's just what we want. But I do want that animated when we delete it. For this one, we're going to run into a problem because when we delete it, if we look in the JavaScript at our delete here, we're removing the actual element. So we're removing the li. Since we're removing it, we can't really put an animation on it. I'll show you what happens if we do that. And then I'll show you a few ways to solve it in increasing order of niceness. But let's make, just to show, let's make, well, there's actually a couple ways we can do this. There's actually a way we can just, since we want the same thing, we can tell it to run the fade in reverse by just telling it reverse here. That will run things in reverse. That ends up a little bit weird though, because of the fact that it still goes back to its default thing. But we don't want it on this animation. We want it on something called, we need a class we're going to apply in the JavaScript when we delete it. So we're going to make a class called deleting for this. So we'll just call it deleting, and we will then set the animation to fade in, just what we have there above, not fade out. Sorry, I left Copilot on because of some other stuff I was doing here. That's okay though, it's not being too disruptive, so we're gonna let it stay. All right, so we can just put reverse here, and now there is a deleting class. So if we apply that, we can actually see it delete. Now, for a moment here, to show you what the problem is, I'm gonna delete that, or comment out this actual removal, which will make our delete not work, but we'll instead add a class to it. So class list dot add, and we will add that class of deleting, and that'll put the class on when we push the delete button. Should. Okay. Let me see what's going on here. See if we have any errors going on. No errors, just doesn't like that deleting class. Deleting. Let's see if deleting is getting added to it and if I just messed up the animation somehow. So we can do that with our inspector here. Let's see if that one has a class of deleting. Class. Oh, because we are putting it directly on the to-do list. We don't want to put it on the to-do list. We want to put it on the item. So that won't do us any good. We want to put it on, not to-do list, but e.target.parent element. So the button's parent element, which is the still not getting anything here. Okay, it says there's no classes on the element. Even as I click on this thing, not getting, oh, maybe I'm expecting the wrong thing. Let me check here. All right, yeah, it does have deleting on it. So when I put deleting on it, it is crossing out that animation. So let's see what is going on here. That means that it's putting the class on, but the class is being overridden. So I don't, is that going to tell us invalid property name? Oh, I spelled animation wrong. Okay, that'll do it. Yeah. Okay, so let's see it now. Okay, still having some trouble. So let's take a look there again at that list item. So it does have that ease in, out, reverse. Have that in the wrong order. Yeah, there's ease in, out. Let me check the order real quick here to check this. Oh, we can do that. We'll just put it on different property because I never remember what the rules are, if there are, on the order here. So let's put that as reverse. Okay. So instead of using the big element. Okay, it is not doing that. It should be. Oh, I'm not sure on this one. We might have to set all those final states here on the class so it knows where it's going. So let's put all the 0% on here. And we will tell it. Okay, it did it, but it didn't animate. Yeah. It's 0 height and all, but not quite what I wanted. I think it may be that it's not restarting this animation because it's not seeing the animation change even though I'm changing the direction. I think for right now, I'm just going to make one called fade out that just does the opposite instead of trying to use the reverse trick. Maybe that's what we should do. Let's just flip these around. Reverse should have worked. I'm just getting something silly wrong. I don't want to spend too much time on it. All right, so let's just make this fade out. Right. There we go. All right, so it's we have that animation we wanted for fading out now. And you can see that's working. That's what we want. But it's not really being removed because I commented that part out. So you see the problem here is if I put that removal back. So I say, go ahead and apply the deleting class so that will animate the fade out and then remove the child. That doesn't really work. It just disappears right away. The reason why is that we're starting the animation here. but the animation takes 0.25 seconds. We're kind of starting it asynchronously and then removing the element right away. So we never get to see the animation. So if I comment out that remove, we saw it because I'm not removing it. But we do need to apply this animation and then remove the thing here. So there's a few ways we can do that. The not great way to do it is to do a set timeout and wrap this stuff in a lambda. And then tell it to take 250 milliseconds and time it so that it, it starts the animation, and then while the animation's running, it waits 250 milliseconds to remove it. And that'll work. And you can see it does remove the things. You can see it's kind of going there. But it's kind of sloppy because while we said the animation should be 250 milliseconds, we technically don't have that guarantee. It depends on animation framing. If somebody's on a slow machine, we may not get exactly 250 milliseconds. And it's just not a very precise way to do it, to just start two asynchronous things and try to time them with using the same timing. So the better way to do it is for us to take this item. So we're going to do e target parent element. Again, this is the list item. Since we're using it twice, I might make a variable here. And then use that. All right, so what we're going to do instead of the set timeout is we're going to do li add event listener. And there's an event listener, an event called animation end. And this will run when the animation is complete. So there's no 250 milliseconds there. It's just whenever any animation finishes on this. Now this time it works because this will work because we only have one animation going here, so we don't care. But it's important to know that this event will get run anytime any animation ends. So if you had multiple animations attached to an element at once, or if you use different ones at different times, you need to watch out for that. So we could wrap this in if e dot actually banking on Copilot a little bit here because I'm forgetting it, which I shouldn't do. I should look that up. But there is a property on the event that will tell you which animation is ending. It's animation name. So we can do, if we want to make sure, we could do if e.animation name equals, we called it fade out, and then wrap our body kind of in that. So now this is only happening there. Now we can't attach, our lambda is still going to get run no matter which animation, but we can within our lambda do that. Now you might be wondering, I attached an event listener, shouldn't we remove the event listener when we're done? We should in some cases. In this case we don't need to because the element's being removed anyway. So when that element removal happens, that's going to get cleaned up anyway, so we don't need to worry about that. So that takes care of our problem. that thing where we're doing that. But it's not very general, and it doesn't look very nice to have to like wrap the callback, especially if you're doing more complicated stuff in here. It wouldn't be great. So this is okay, but we can add one helper method here that'll let us use some modern JavaScript stuff and do this animation a little bit nicer. So this is kind of the thing I wanted to, the big thing I wanted to show you with animation was a nice way to do this with modern JavaScript so that we don't have these callbacks and everything. So we're just gonna make a little helper function here called run animation, and you notice I made it async because we're going to do a little trick there. Class name. So we're going to want the class name that holds the animation. So that in this case would be that deleting class. And then we want the name of the animation. Animation name. So there's a way we could do it with having this just take the animation name. But a lot of times we want to apply a whole class so that we have that end state without having to do the, there's another thing we can do with animations to fix that. But I'm going to do this version for now where we pass the class name and we pass the animation name. And the idea here is that if we do that, we can make any callback async if we want to. And then instead of this stuff, we want to write this as await run animation. It does need the element too. So we're going to run the animation li, and we're going to, the class name we're trying to apply is deleting, and the animation name is fade out. So this is the way we want to write our code, is that we have an awaitable run animation thing where we can do that, and then right afterwards just write our code this way so that it's all kind of right in a row. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is basically we're just wrapping this stuff and we're going to make it async. So return. Copilot kind of ruined it for me, but anyway, we're going to make a new promise, and our promise is going to start off by putting that class on it, just like we were doing below, and then we're going to well, we're going to improve this a little bit. And get rid of this here. Okay. So we're going to remove, once the animation ends, we're going to remove the class and call resolve. I actually don't want this removing the class. What we want to do here actually is just resolve as soon as the animation's done. Okay. So this is, this is why we shouldn't be using Copilot. Let me turn that off real quick. Actually, it's starting to make me. There we go. All right. So anyway, we return a new promise, and we can construct a promise by giving it a thing to run, where resolve is the callback that we call once we're done. So this lets us kind of turn this event listener thing with the callback. It lets us generalize it and turn it into a promise, so something that can be awaited. So now we have this useful thing, if we're doing other animations, be really useful, where we can just tell it an element, the class that applies the animation, and the animation name, and it will apply the animation and continue. So now with that done, let's give that a shot and make sure it's working, and it's working. No gap there, so you can see it is erasing stuff. We go back here, it's back in there. Okay, so now we have animations while we're crossing things off, while we're adding things, and while we're removing things. And if we use this little helper function, we can write our animations in a nice async way, where in the click handler we just can say that. I don't think we need this variable anymore here anymore, now that we're only using it once. I'm just going to inline that variable. And yeah, now you can see it looks really nice. The delete says await running the delete animation, and then after that, remove the target element and save to local storage. So this gives us all the behavior that we want. So there's that little helper function. Oh, we do need to add one thing here, and that's on this animation event. I like to check, as we did below, that the that it's the right animation. So I want to check if e animation name is equal to the animation name that was provided. So then we resolve. So you can write it like that. You can put the braces if you're somebody that needs those braces there. I usually like braces and separate line, but when it's quick stuff like this, sometimes I don't. Up to you. But that should do it. That should still work. Okay, that's just an extra guard in there in case we had another animation running, that this thing wouldn't see that animation finish and stomp on it. So it's just an extra paranoid little check there. If you don't do that check, if you're not thinking you're going to have colliding ones, you can get rid of this whole parameter. And then you just have the element and the class name that contains the animation to apply, and that'll work. But that's it. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully certain people watching this video don't get too annoyed that I had Copilot turned on. I know one of the few people watching these videos is a big AI hater, and I kind of tend to agree with her, but I do use it sometimes when I'm trying things, especially when I'm trying things to critique the current state of AI. Actually, that was a good example of it generating a whole lot of code that was not quite what we wanted. But I will not turn this recording into a big AI rant. That'll come later. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully this whole thing has been, now that we're done with this whole project, that this has shown you that you can make a whole app using native code without a framework, and it's not too bad, and you can get some nice short code out of it. I probably, since this is a function, since this is a utility one, I'm going to move that to the bottom. Probably should move this up here. And then, yeah, down below we have all our function definitions. Maybe the other way around, but either way. But yeah, as you can see, it's what do we end up with for writing our whole to-do list with local storage? We have 62 lines of code with plenty of white space going on here. Yeah, not too bad for how much JavaScript code we had to write. And if you wrote the equivalent React code, just the part you'd write, you would get away with less code than this, but not a lot less. And you know, you'd still have to do most of the things we're doing here. You would just be doing them declaratively and carrying a large, several kilobyte large framework around with you. I know several K doesn't seem like that much, but you know, it adds up over time, especially if you're running a whole bunch of, somebody has a whole bunch of tabs open and you're doing all that stuff. And not everybody properly minimizes things or properly minifies things. So nice and small. our CSS nice and small. We don't have a giant Tailwind thing, Tailwind library. Again, I know there's a compiler that'll shrink the styles down a little bit for you, but you know, it's hard to beat this. Pretty short, and we got everything done. And on top of that, other bonus to doing things with native code is not just that we don't need the frameworks and they hurt performance. It's also the fact that by using open technologies, you keep the web more open. Even if your stuff is open source, if you were using React or one of those frameworks, somebody that is learning web development or curious about how you did something cannot really effectively see it in here. Even if you publish source maps, it can just be kind of tricky. Whereas this way, this works the way the web used to, which is that anybody can see what I'm doing here. You can go to view source. If nothing, even without using these debug tools, you can go to view source and they can see. Disregard this. This is just being injected by live server. So the actual page would just be up to there. And they can see all the style work I did on the page, all the HTML. And then if they click on this, they can see all the code that I wrote that makes this thing work. And if they click on this, they can see our site level CSS. So somebody visiting this page and somebody that's learning can just go and look at this stuff, click around it, and easily see what to do and see how I did it with no crazy CSS classes to translate or compiled JavaScript to sort through or anything like that. Also with the inspector, you know, all of my HTML remains very readable and nice looking, and you can see everything going on there. And if we go over to the debugger here, we can look at the JavaScript file right here. And even somebody that's learning can look and see what this is doing. And they can even set breakpoints so they can say, okay, well, what's going on when they add an item? They add an item and they can see it stop there. They can see all the code for it and, you know, can step through it and all that good stuff. With the, I'm trying to find the, not super used to the Firefox. Here we go. So where is step over? There it is. So yeah, they can step line by line, look at variables and kind of see what I'm doing and figure that out. And then even in the immediate window, I think you can run these things and see what's going on. Or resume and see that thing added. So I think that that's really useful. I know a lot of people, especially if you're, you know, doing websites for production, you're like, well, I don't care. Actually, I maybe want the obfuscation, or maybe I don't care about people that are trying to learn web stuff. You should, though. You should care. You shouldn't be trying to obfuscate your code. Code being open and easily available for everybody to look at how things are being done and how things on the web actually work is good for everybody. It's good for people learning, more people making web stuff, more people doing, you know, neat things that we can all learn from. So that is the other reason. Well, that is one of the big reasons. I shouldn't say the other. There are several, but that is one of the reasons that I prefer writing things this way, and why I think that people should. You know, at the top of the list is the fact that you don't need those frameworks and you can do things this way. But, you know, there are other things on that list, and one of those is the openness of the code for somebody that's looking at this and wanting to learn about how things were done. All right, well, that's it for this video. That's it for this native to-do app. I don't think I'll be doing too many more walkthroughs after this. I will probably make something bigger ahead of time and then kind of show how we do a multi-page app and how that all looks and comes together. I want to do that. I want to talk about web components, page transitions, and all the stuff that we need for like a larger app that we can still design using just native web technologies. All right, so hopefully I'll get to that soon. I also want to do more videos coming up talking about general topics instead of just looking at code or writing code in the video and showing you stuff. There's definitely a lot going on the web right now that is worth talking about that I want to respond to. There's a thing going around about this. Well, you'll see hopefully in the next video. But anyway, that'll be it. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet. And I will see you in the next video.